Afternoon. We're going to get this lovely adventure on the road here, and I say on the road with Jess because our good poor friends are out on the road here. But anyway, first and foremost, for you folks on Zoom, welcome. As we had shared in the chat, there is an accident on the road, so blessings to whomever is involved in that accident. But unfortunately, there are some folks out there I know that are very interested in being in the room here that are sitting in traffic waiting. So we were trying to give a few more minutes there. So anyway, thank you for your patience for the folks on Zoom. For you here, this shows that Princeville strong, the folks who were able to make it here. So thank you for joining us and being part of our community. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Thomas Daubert. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Kauaʻi Wildlife Refuges. It's my honor to welcome you to this month's Princeville Moʻolelo, which we are pleased to offer in partnership with the Princeville at Hanalei Community Association Events Committee. Thank you for the space and for the technology and for our opportunity to continue to come together and build community. So thank you all for being here. This is my chance to do a quick plug and a quick ad for who we are as a friends group for those who are not as familiar. And then I'll pass the microphone over to our incredible speaker that we're all so excited to hear from. So super quickly, Friends of Kauaʻi Wildlife Refuges is the dedicated nonprofit friends group established to support our island's 3 national wildlife refuges located at Hanalei, Kūlauea, and Kīlauea Point. And of course, at Hanalei and Kūlauea, we are helping to preserve and protect critically endangered water birds as well as some migratory birds. And as I've mentioned in a couple of these sessions, we're going to be bringing back into this conversation greater awareness because we've learned this year that the population density for our water birds is not where we want it to be, and there's more work for us to do. But it's more of the reason as well why we are here to help Hanalei in particular have the resources they need to protect the populations there. It's an incredibly important site for these water birds, and I just want to make sure and continue to put that little bit of information out there for our awareness. Well, as we then come back and talk more deeply about it in future segments of this series. In addition, of course, Kīlauea Point is a home for seabirds and a place that we all love to visit. And what we do as a friends group is basically bring our community together and provide a mechanism for your love and your generosity for these places, these special protected places and the wildlife that depend upon them, and bring those resources to our friends at Fish and Wildlife and allow them to do their work, their amazing work. And let me just pause for a moment. In the room today, we have Krista and we have Eldridge and we have some of our kupu. And as we know, this has been an incredibly trying time for our federal employees and our Fish and Wildlife friends. And we lift you up, we hold you up, we send our love. We're so glad you're here. And I'd just like a round of applause for everyone. There was stress for those team members on every aspect of that closure. Those that were forced to be there working at Kīlauea Point with a skeletal crew, those that were not working and were doing so without receiving a paycheck, and so trying to get by and support their families through that time period without their employer, the government, backing them up and supporting them, and those that also rotated through and showed up to work and be there for the wildlife, not being paid. I mean, just every aspect that shows the passion and the love these people have for this work. And it is our incredible honor to do everything we can as a friends group to help lift them up. So anyway, again, thank you for being here and all you do. But anyway, super quick, some of our pillar programs. We are so proud and honored to support our friends at Save Our Shearwaters by helping to underwrite the cost of care for birds that are sick and injured coming from our refuges. We do community outreach, as we are doing today, bringing our community together, as well as going out and meeting with little ones and having conversations with them and playing our wildlife engagement game here. Just any way that we can help extend the mission and the work of the refuge and bring awareness that leads to advocacy and support. And it's really our honor to do that. And of course, one of those pieces as well is plugging into the young people of our world with education programs, free buses for field trips, supplies, all kinds of good stuff for the littles. And then on the other end of the scale, our scholarship program is something we're incredibly proud of, to continue to invest in young people who have a future in this work. And it's really an honor in the name of Daniel Moriarty to be able to support that scholarship. First and foremost, though, we are here to underwrite directly the work of the Refuge and filling in pukas in their budgets of whether that's supplies or contracts or just anywhere that their budget isn't what they need. Our goal is to try to raise those funds and find ways to extend that work. And so that's the primary reason that we are here. So for those of you that are just getting to know us, there are multiple ways that you can become a part of our community and help us. Visiting us out at Kīlauea Point, shopping our nature store, both at the Refuge and through our online store, volunteering, donating, joining our email list, and just coming and being a part of this series, which for those of you that might not know, every one of these is archived and is out on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and check out some great content, and with all fairness as well, you can see our evolution of our understanding of technology has gotten a little better along the way. So that's my way of saying thank you for your patience as we've been on our journey together. But anyway, we're really honored to have been able to archive some really incredible conversations, lots of great sharing, lots of great information. So feel free to check that out. We are going to take December off just because I feel like that's a super busy time for everyone. But we're looking forward to resuming our series in January. And sometime around January or February, we're looking forward to hosting the folks who are doing the restoration right now on the lens of the lighthouse at Kīlauea Point. It's a really interesting aspect of who we are and part of our story. And I myself am really looking forward to hearing from this really cool dude who goes around the country and does this and works with lighthouses and restores their lenses. And of course, we know we are so proud of our Daniel K. Inouye Lighthouse. It's one of the premier examples of an intact lighthouse. And so sometime around January, February, when they come back to reinstall the lens, we're going to plug them into our series, and I hope you check it out. That's going to be a fun one. So just a little plug for that. But today we have in our midst, well, actually she's in our midst just about every month when we're here, but this is our first time getting Louise Barnfield in front of the camera. For those that you don't know her, Louise Barnfield has volunteered with the Kauaʻi National Wildlife Refuge Complex since 2012. And for most of those years has been monitoring Laysan albatross, the Laysan albatross that returned to us in November for their breeding season. Since 2016, she has also volunteered with the Annual Nest Count crew that travels to Kuaihelani, how'd I do? Otherwise known as Midway, each winter to count all of the active nests, which you're gonna see some really cool content around that experience. She returns on alternate years as a co-leader of the team, including this past season when she lived at the atoll for 2 months through December and January. And so a quick shout out to the team at Kīlauea Point, Louise, Yuka, Patty, and others who are the driving force of maintaining the work of monitoring and supporting our mōlī colonies at Kīlauea Point, to Hob and Kathy and a whole host of others that are doing so on private lands as well, because mōlī don't know boundaries, thank goodness. But we're just so honored for the work that we do at Kīlauea Point to host and create safe spaces for that. And that work would not be able to happen. This is one of the things we talk about. Fish and wildlife is spread so thin, it just wouldn't continue without incredibly passionate volunteers like Louise Barnfield. Yeah. Louise, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who helped us with this. I'll mention that later as well. Thank you for the intro, Thomas. Thomas is also one of the ones who helps us, so he missed his name off the list. So yeah, we could talk about so much to do with the islands and the albatross. and I could film many talks. So to try and fill just one talk, I thought I'd focus on just my experience of being on Midway Atoll, Kuaihelani. I'll probably interchange throughout the evening. The albatross there, what it's like to be there amongst hundreds of thousands of birds, and also to talk a little bit about the data collection that both happens on Midway and also here at Kīlauea Point, that goes into a national survey looking at survival rates, etc., of the albatross. So those two things, but mostly to begin with, I want to cover the island itself, and lots of photos, I hope. So not just me chatting at you, but I hope you get to experience the photos and the videos, which really puts into perspective just what it feels like to be there for a couple of months. So when we travel to Kuaihelani, we have to go on the Fish and Wildlife charter plane that is an 8-seater these days, leaves from Oahu, from Honolulu, and the island of Midway Atoll is up here in the far west corner of the Northwestern Islands, and it's about 1,200 miles or so from Honolulu. So very remote, and takes about 3.5 hours to get there, depending on the direction and the wind. This is what it looks like from the satellite. I love this picture. I just wish that I could get to see that when we fly in, but we have to fly in at night because of the danger of bird strikes during the day. So I never get to see it like this, but it's made up of 3 small island areas: Sand Island, Eastern Island, and then this little tiny bit called Spit, which is now actually joined to Eastern Island. As the landmass changes, there's now this large sandbar that's joined the two together. Sand Island is where everybody lives. Eastern Island is where you can just about make out the old runways from World War II. That's where all the World War II aircraft took off from and landed. So I can't see it when we first fly in, but I do see it in the daytime. And this is what it looks like. This was fairly early on when I got there. The leaders tend to arrive a couple of weeks before the rest of the crew to set up. And so although a lot of them are settled on nests, there's an awful lot of activity going on as well. So the protocol for counting these guys, we have to count every one of the active nests on the island. The protocol is that we start counting around mid-December, which is when we pretty much hope that all the nests are laid. We wait until the biologist tells us. And the count needs to finish before the middle of January, which is certainly before the chicks start hatching, and also before the bone-in petrels lay their eggs, which we'll come to later. So Midway Atoll is a national wildlife refuge. It's run by the Fish and Wildlife Service. The entire atoll is now a refuge and has been since it was taken over from the Navy back in the 70s, I think. But it was a large naval base at one time. So there's still some buildings there, although many of them have now been taken down or in bad repair just because of the age of them. It's in the Papahānaumokuākea National Refuge, which is the national monument, and that monument is the seaborne monument that extends to 200 miles outside of all of those northwestern islands. And as I said, the site of Battle of Midway as well. So there are a lot of memorials and monuments around the atoll that speak to the battle. That's our crew of 12 that went out this last year. It used to be 18. Sadly, the group is now 12, so it's harder work, but we get it done. And there are people living on the island year round. So the residents usually number about maybe 45 or so, 40 to 45. It varies a lot. And of course, this particular year with everything that's been happening, it's been varying more. So my numbers are a bit iffy. But you can see from that with a count team of 12, we land on an island that's usually about 40 people. That makes quite a difference to the population. Of the Fish and Wildlife staff, there's only now about probably 5, 6 maximum who are regular paid Fish and Wildlife staff. There are a number of volunteers who can go out there. If any of you are so inclined, you can actually apply to go out and work on Midway for 6 months at a time. It's a great posting if you're about 30 years younger than I am. It's hard work, but they have a ball out there. And then Chūgash is Chūgash Corporation. They are a large corporation, but one of the things they do is to provide the staff for remote government areas. So they have government contracts, places like Guam, Wake, and here, and they run everything else. So they are our engineers, our bottle washers, our chefs, our electricians, everybody who runs and maintains that property. And they're fabulous. The guys who are on this island now, over time, have now become purely Thai workers. They're a group of Thais. They're all either related or friends of each other. And I don't know whether you have any Thai friends, but they are the most remarkable people and will do anything for you at any time. They're really lovely. A lot of people ask me when I go out there whether I'm going to live in a hut or a tent, because there are some quite remote islands out there. But being that this was an old naval base, it's really rather civilized. So this is one of the remaining, it's probably the remaining junior officer barracks, Charlie barracks. There was an Alpha, a Bravo, a Charlie, a Delta. All the others have gone over time. But this is used for the temporary type of people who go to the island. And so most of our crew will go here. They have decent living room area. They have a decent bedroom, comfortable beds. They even have a shower. I don't know how many of you can see at the back of the room, but that's 1940s, 50s type plumbing. Still works. And honestly, the water is hot. The pressure is good. Nothing else needed at the end of a long day. However, myself and my co-leader Liz have been upgraded to this house when we go out there. We've had it the last 3 or 4 times we've been there. It's a cute little house. It was actually originally the naval brig. There were 4 jail cells in there. And at some point it was renovated into this house. And what's great about it is we have this huge carport extending out from it. That becomes our base yard. So when we get there and we start setting up and we have paint and supplies, etc., we can have it all under cover. They even replaced the roof for us a couple of years ago, which I was very grateful for. And then we have this little golf cart. Every year I show up, I wonder whether the golf cart is still going to be going. And it is. It stinks, but it goes, and it takes all of our supplies. Other than that, we travel either on foot or in bikes. You made it. Yeah, I'm sorry, we've got some more people coming into the room who've obviously been held up in that accident. So I'm really sorry about that, and I'm glad you made it. You haven't missed too much, have they? Not too much. We take our meals in Clipper House. This used to be, when the island was open to visitors, this used to be a fancy French restaurant. I never knew it during that time, but it is still pretty fancy for us. It's buffet style, but with the Thai chefs that we have the most fantastic food 3 times a day. A mix of anything from from Western cuisine through to Thai, fantastic Thai curries. It's a great place to be. We never go hungry. And if you're sitting outside that area at any time of day, you can watch the Albatross fly in and take off. And I think we need more volume on this if you can. If you listen carefully, you can hear their patter on the sand. There you go. So the whole of the atoll is very, very low to the ground, hardly off sea level. And so they have to take a running jump to get launched. Love that. Some takeoffs are more successful than others. Like this one, abort. Tell you what, when you watch this as well, you see the pitter patter on the sand. Nice storm, yeah, storm brewing in that one. You also see their footmarks afterwards with them clawing to get going on the sand. Just another video. So instead of just 1 or 2, here's a whole mass. This is what it's like throughout the island. So there's hardly a space on the island that isn't filled with nesting albatross. This is a field that is between the barracks I showed you and Clipper House. And so we go back and forth through this lot several times a day. Very windy. I'm afraid a lot of my videos are very windy. Yes, John? Has that population increased? In the last 10 years, it's increased a little. I'll show you some graphs later. It goes up and down each year. I wouldn't say it's increased hugely in the whole population. Pretty stable. That's the Laysan albatross. We also have other albatross there. So this is a map of Sand Island, and you can see that every area is divided up here. They're divided into sectors. There are 50 sectors on Sand Island. There's another 10 on Eastern, and Spit is one sector on its own. And those lines are coordinated. They've got GPS coordinates, and those are the same sectors we use every year. When we go back as leaders to set up at the beginning of the count, we will go back, we will find certain marks that will distinguish where these sectors are, and then we will map out with flags or with extra posts and pillars where those lines are, so that we stick to the same sectors every year when we're counting. So we're not just getting a total count of the island, we're actually getting to count sector by sector as well, which is quite interesting to compare over the years. We do keep some permanent markers, as well as having the GPS waypoints on a map on our phones that we can refer to. We have these old markers, hobo marks, that divide up the different sectors. So we can see that this is an old track from the Navy days, goes between these sectors. Here there's a concrete post. We use those concrete blocks quite a lot and paint them so that we can find them when we go back the next year. However, that's in sand and they often get buried. So again, another of our setup jobs is to go out and try and find these buried concrete blocks. I could talk a lot about how the count works in detail, but just to give you an idea, given those sector areas have boundaries, to count, we typically break up into a couple of groups of 6, especially when we've got open land like this. And we'll start at one boundary and we'll work through to the opposite boundary, and we're transecting. And by doing that, we are counting every nest as we go. So the idea is we walk in one line, each person looks to one side or the other, looks like they might be looking this way at the moment, looking to their left, and they're counting every active nest that they find between them. We're not counting birds. We're not counting the ones that are walking around. We're not counting the ones that are sitting on the ground. We're counting the ones that are actually sitting on an egg. We're not counting eggs if there isn't a bird sitting on them either. So it really is every active nest. And it's sort of a bit of an art to be able to tell the difference between a bird that's just sitting on the ground and one that's sitting on an egg. We use clickers, one clicker for the Laysan albatross, one clicker for the Blackfoot. You can see some ones here. And when we get to the far boundary, we pivot around the end person and we walk back. That's the basis of it. There's more to it. We have to have some paint. We paint a line between the different transects that we do. And so by doing it this way and by being rigid about where we're standing and which birds we're counting, we can ensure that we've actually counted every nest. Just another way of looking at it, this is a sector on Eastern Island. So it's a large sector, it's a large island, it's a large sector. And when we're walking it, we often set a tracker going. So this just shows the track that I took on this particular occasion through that sector. Different color because we probably stopped for lunch and started again. Different width because one of our team was off counting birds in another area and joined us later. So we can take more people in a swathe. When we've got an extra person, we can cover more ground. How are we doing? Any questions so far? I'm zooming through. Yeah.
Hey, like if you have the albatross sitting on a nest, do you know if there's an egg under there? Do you have to take them off or?
Yeah, so asking about the difference between a bird that's just sitting there or that's actually got an egg on it. And most of the times you can tell pretty well from their attitude. So when you're walking, given that we're walking not that far away from each other, if there's a bird just sitting on the ground, either they'll be a bit disturbed by us and it'll stand up, or if we're not sure, if we really don't know from the look of it that it's on an egg, we'll just give it a little gentle poke or a little nudge. And a bird that's not sitting on an egg will just stand up and look at you. A bird that's sitting on an egg will say, "Get away from me, I'm not moving, I'm sitting on this egg and nobody can make me." And so, but there are differences as well, the way they build a nest around them. You can tell the difference, the way they're sitting, often with their wings slightly apart when they're sitting on an egg, as opposed to sitting on the ground. Sometimes it's a little bit of a balancing act, and occasionally we need to check. Yeah.
When was the survey first initiated in this system, and who designed it?
Who designed? Oh God, I don't know. Kim, do you know who designed it? Oh well, yeah. Actually, it would have been Fish and Wildlife in Honolulu have controlled this, since it started. It started in 1992, and it's always been conducted by volunteers. There was a married couple who ran it every single year, I think, until they retired about 4 or 5 years ago. And then people like myself have sort of taken over the leadership roles. But yeah, 1992.
I would hate to think of what would happen during one of the tsunamis, especially back in the
2011.
back in the early 2000s.
Actually in the 40s as well. But if you think back to prior naval basing, when the naval base was there were not nearly the number of albatross that there are now.
Okay, but
yeah.
So the albatross and the humans, what happens to those?
Yeah.
People?
Well, the humans are okay because that Charlie barracks that I showed you is 3 flights up. And so the tsunami alert is you get your butt up to level 3 of Charlie. You can't do that with the albatross. So unfortunately, they suffer. And that's one of the problems now with sea level rise. I'll talk a little bit more about the result from the tsunami in 2011. But yeah, it's a problem, especially as storms get more extreme now. Eastern Island in particular is incredibly flat. So the tsunami washed over pretty much the entirety of Eastern. Sand, not quite so much. There are areas of sand. It's sort of a bigger area anyway. There are areas in the center of sand that are a full 42 feet above sea level.
Okay, when you do have a tsunami like that, are the birds, do they take off? Or do they have an instinct to take off?
Yeah.
Or they just sit there and they're washed away? Because it's a gradual
Yeah.
water, but
I wasn't there during the 2011, but of course, it also depends on the time of year. So the tsunami that was resulted from the Japanese earthquake in 2011 came through in, I think it was March, which was a terrible, terrible time because it was when the chicks were still pretty newly hatched, you know, maybe 4, 6 weeks old, something like that. There would still have been a lot of adults on the ground. At that point, I'm not sure whether there would have been adults sitting on their chicks. If they weren't actually sitting on their eggs or their chicks, they're quite likely to have flown off, although I know a lot of adults were found during that tsunami. As for the chicks, they wouldn't have survived. They lost, I think the total, as Hubble probably remembers, about 200,000 birds on that date. So unfortunately, it depends on the time of year. Good questions, depressing questions.
I was just wondering, have the albatross like grown accustomed to like the people on that island?
I think to a certain extent they have. We move freely among them, but they're a bit like the ones around here. If anyone's really experienced the birds in Princeville, they're different characters. Some of them will snap at you and some of them totally ignore you. Most of the ones sitting on their eggs tend to sort of totally ignore you. They zone out anyway. They go into some kind of trance when they're sitting on their eggs. So they really don't care. I would tell you the ones that probably do more are the black-footed albatross. They just tend to be more aggressive and they will snap. We try not to disturb them too much, but you can imagine the way they're set. We're walking through them. And so mostly they're fine. I think I would say that there are ones, because they nest faithfully each year, they come back to where they've been before. I would say the ones around the buildings, like Charlie Barracks, they don't give a damn. They're quite happy, and in fact, they're quite happy right outside the barracks. So yeah, it depends. Carry on. So I talked about the sectors. As we work on the sectors, this is over a number of days. We might cover one sector or a couple of sectors in a day. And as we do so, we fill out this piece of paper that we leave in Clipper House and in Charlie so people can see it. And as the days go on, we highlight the areas as we complete them until eventually the entire map, including Little Spit, is all filled in and we get our total. And that was our grand total at the end of last year, which wasn't quite a record, but it was the highest for about 10 years. It was really quite a high total for us. It was a high year. They do tend to go up and down.
How big are the islands?
Yeah, good question. So Sand Island is roughly, I think, about 2.5 miles by about 1.5, something like that. Eastern, probably a little bit smaller, but it's not much.
It's like the population density of
Yeah,
Manhattan.
oh, there you go. Nancy just said it's like the population of Manhattan.
Louise, we have a question on Zoom. Why are the sectors so much larger on Eastern than on Sand Island?
Yeah, that's what I ask every time I go.
That's a good question.
What's a good question? Some of them are absolutely enormous, and quite actually, it's so enormous that we'll often take both teams, so all 12 of us over, and we've sort of figured out best ways of tackling all these sectors. And there are a couple on Eastern where we will actually divide and conquer. We'll start in the middle, and one team will work one way and one team will work the other, or we'll work to meet each other. I don't know why. It could be just because of the divisions. If you look at Sand Island, because that's where the naval base was, where everybody lived, there are a lot of roads and tracks, and so the divisions of the whole of Sand Island are rather more geared to saying, okay, well, we're going to make this track a boundary, and that track a boundary, and this road a boundary. You get out to Eastern, it's this enormous, great big open area with a couple of runways on it. So I suspect that the way it was divided was just based down to that kind of thing, trying to find some areas. Long way of saying I don't really know. So when we're counting, what I showed you before was a fairly flat piece of land out near the airport. It was relatively simple to count, but a lot of the land we count is like this with holes all over it. Those holes are a success story. Gives me the shivers just to think about it, but these are the bone-in petrels, gorgeous little petrels, a huge population on Midway, and a big success story. So we have to be careful when we're walking this ground. We try to avoid crashing the burrows. It's not possible to avoid it completely, but we do the best we can. So not only the holes that you can see there, but those burrowing birds burrow for many feet underground. And actually the shearwaters here do as well. The wedge-tailed shearwater do, you just don't notice it as much. But where they burrow, even around those holes, the ground is very unstable. So it's impossible not to crash an occasional burrow, to collapse down into a burrow. And when you do, you need some way of at least trying to avoid the worst of it. So in order to try and reduce the crashes, some years ago, we developed these things called burrow shoes. A number of different designs to these, and one of the best for a lot of people, if you're fairly lightweight, were these orange ones. They were junior snowshoes. Unfortunately, we can't seem to get those online anymore, but they were plastic, and they held up pretty well, especially the final ones will probably have more zip ties in than the plastic, but they did hold up. We've tried different things over time, plywood of different thicknesses, different sort of bungee cords and things to wrap around the boots, around the feet. But recently, one of the best designs we've come up with is to use ski bindings and to put those ski bindings or snowshoe bindings on pieces of plywood. The snowshoe bindings hold up pretty well, so they can be reused for several years. The plywood doesn't, because it gets wet and broken. And so that was our production line on the right-hand side, was at the end of this season, with one of my friends making a whole load ready for next year. This is what it looks like when we wear them. So I mentioned counting. We stop counting every now and then to take our counts off the clickers. So at regular intervals, we will mark down the numbers that we've got in a book. For safety, we have 2 people marking in 2 different books. And so at this point, we're taking a break. We've probably written down those numbers in our books, but you can see everybody in their burrow shoes. And I don't know how many of you, in the age I'm getting to as well now, have dicky knees and dicky hips. But if you've got bad hips or knees, that's just not what you want to be wearing for about 10 miles every day. So they're not comfortable, but they certainly do the job. They don't stop crashes altogether. And when we crash, what happens is the whole line has to stop. Because if you think about it, we're counting every nest between us and the next person. If somebody is digging out a burrow, we've lost track of where we are. We've messed up our count. So as soon as somebody crashes a burrow, they yell burrow, and then they get down on their hands and knees. They clear out the burrow, and if there's a bird in it, they release the bird. However, when you've got a lot of burrows, a lot of people keep crashing them. So we had 2 people go down at this point. While one was down digging her burrow out, the other one said, got a burrow, and so they're both digging out. Problem comes in, one finishes digging out the burrow, they stand up, we all start off again. Seconds later, somebody shouts burrow. They are so close together now, all these burrows, you're constantly stopping and starting as you go through. So it really is a challenge, and of course a worry for the birds as well. This is what they look like, those little things that we're digging out of burrows. This one actually was on the ground, and you can see it was caught in some fish netting. And so we were able to release it and send it on its way. One of the good things about doing the count is that we get to transect the entire island. We do come across injured birds, and in some cases we can rescue them. So that's kind of a good thing about what we do as well. And I said there's a lot of them. This is what it looks like at dusk when they come back. The whistling is the albatross. And there's wind. Monica just asked if we counted the bone-in petrels. No, thank goodness. No, we don't. I mean, there are estimates made, and there are hundreds of thousands of them. But it's an amazing sight, and given that we're riding our bikes to and from dinner in the evenings, you have to be really careful not to bash into the birds or vice versa. This is a view of Eastern Island. When we go across to Eastern Island, some days are like this, really calm and lovely. We have to go across in an old landing craft, which doesn't have a very deep hull, and so it is susceptible to bad weather, which it sometimes is. So it can get to be a pretty rough crossing. We did get across that day, but there are going to be days when we can't go at all. So we have to adjust our schedule accordingly to try and get to Eastern on some days. When we go to Eastern, we get to go the whole day. We get to take lunch with us, and that means we get to spend our lunch hour on the beach somewhere wonderful. There, you might be able to see there's a monk seal in this photo in the distance. So we were having lunch watching that monk seal at a distance. Still on Eastern, this is a 360-degree video, 360 of Eastern Island. You'll see the old runway, the old tarmac there. And a Battle of Midway Memorial in the middle of it. Those are not really houses, they're huts that are used by the people who are maintaining the land. We have people who do sort of weed checks for the verbicina. You heard about the verbicina out there? It was a terrible nightmare for many years. It overgrew the entire island, and they still check for seedlings. It still has a life somewhere there in the soil. And so they hold their supplies there and that kind of thing. They also do duck checks. We have Laysan ducks on there in the seeps. So any of their supplies, that sort of thing, is held in those huts. We have birds out there that don't quite know what to do when they're making a nest, and they may be practicing. So they're either juveniles or non-nesters, and they'll find whatever they can find to pretend it's an egg. In this case, it was a fishing buoy. I've seen a bird avidly incubating a tiny stone before now. So. Something everybody asks about is, of course, the displays that the albatross do. So I thought you'd like to see both the Laysan and the Blackfoot. We don't get the chance to see the black-footed albatross on this island, and there are similarities and differences to their dances. So here's the Laysan, which if you're in the neighborhood in the next few weeks, months, you would see them doing this. See how they put their bill under one wing? It's always only under one wing, one or the other, but only one at a time. The sky moo. They say that the more coordinated they are in the movements, the more likely they are to become a breeding pair. So they're testing each other out, I guess. These could already be a breeding pair, non-nesting, or they could be juvenile. And it's a bit like around the neighborhood as well. It's like a juvenile discotheque. And then you compare and contrast. Much more raucous, up on their toes. And then with them, the move that's completely different is both wings go out. Yes, so we've got nesting black-footed albatross on Lehua, near Niihau, the little island off Niihau. And then on Oahu, they've got a colony of Blackfoot now that translocated there. We do see them flying over our refuge. So we've had flybys. We don't know of any nesting yet, actually on a refuge land. Kim, you had one land, didn't you? Yeah, she's had them land on. Kim actually monitors some private lands here, so she's seen them land, but no nest yet. We have decoys set up to encourage them. I think 645 included the Blackfoot. I think it's 620 something for Lao and about 20 something thousand for the beefer.
Right?
We do. Funny you should say that.
Yeah. How do they?
The
She
dances
wasn't
are
planted,
different.
honestly.
Good setup, Cheryl.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have the Laysan, we have the Blackfoot, and then we have this fabulous steely grey creature, which is a hybrid of the Blackfoot and the Laysan. The assumption is that it's going to be a male Blackfoot mating with a female Laysan, purely because the Blackfoot tend to be a lot larger and more aggressive. But that's only an assumption. If anyone can prove me wrong, I'd happily take the information. We also have foreign birds on Midway, birds that weren't banded there, that weren't nested there, weren't bred there. And so these two both have black and white bands with KP on them. And we know from that those birds were banded here on Kīlauea, on Kauaʻi, not necessarily at Kīlauea Point, but they are definitely Kauaʻi bands. So KP 797, I'm not sure if Kathy, you told me about this one or someone else did, but that was banded as an adult back in the season of 2005. So actually 20 years old at least, but I mean, could be 30, could be 40, we just don't know. So the other one on the other side, KP 617, that's the one Kathy told me about 3 years ago, was the first time I saw this one at our own house, that little house I showed you, and it's been back every year since. I even checked with the people the year in between. Which is really rather cool because it was banded as a child, as a chick on Kauaʻi, and Kathy was able to tell me it's banded as a chick on the golf course at Mackay Golf Course, and it has never been seen since. So somehow this chick decided I'm going off to fly, and when I come back, I'm going to Midway. Actually, I should say we also have the same thing here on Kauaʻi. So we have foreign birds here. If you happen to see a pinkish purple band, it's going to be banded on Oahu. You might see yellow, green bands. And we up at the Refuge were thrilled a few years ago when an orange and white band started coming back, which is a bird that was banded on Guadalupe Island off Mexico. And it's been back for some years. We now have several walkers with orange-white bands. And the one that has been coming back for the longest actually fledged a chick last year. So we were very excited about that. Oh. Right, let's get on to chick pics. So black-footed albatross, the chicks tend to be quite white, surprisingly enough. This one, a Laysan chick, you can actually see the veins in the membrane. That's the lining from the egg just after it's hatched. Oh, this one's really cute. So sweet. And that little white mark on its bill, that's what we call the egg tooth, the little bit of calcium deposit that helps it to chip through the egg. And that'll drop off after a couple of days, but that was a newborn. In fact, I think it was the same one I had the video of with his little pip tooth. Here's one I haven't shown you yet, the short-tailed albatross, much rarer, mostly off the islands of Japan, and occasionally show up on Midway, and actually on one or two of the other atolls as well. This one was called for many, many years Lonesome George. Lonesome George sat there waiting year after year until one year, well, he went away and came back again and waited, till one year he showed up with Geraldine. And George and Geraldine have had quite a number of juveniles since in the last, I think, 8, 10, maybe more years now. And there's the chick you can see here. Their chicks tend to hatch earlier than the others, so they'll hatch around the 1st of January. And some of their juveniles have started coming back now. So, you know, they're faithful to the site where they were hatched. So those juveniles are coming back, and we hope that one day they will decide to nest as well. But currently, this is the only one that nests on the island. A lot larger than the Blackfoot or the Laysan albatross, but they all seem to get on and cohabit very well. What they get fascinated by is the fact that this chick appears long before any of the other chicks. And so the Blackfoot and the Laysan albatross will come up and visit, try and preen it, get quite interested in it. Some other residents that we had, so question, no? Other residents that we have on the island, the Laysan duck, another huge success story, was almost extinct years ago and was translocated from Laysan to Midway, and is now very, very successful. So whereas when I first started going about 10 years ago, you hardly ever saw one. I don't know whether you saw many when you were there, Kim, a few. And now you can't miss them. They are just everywhere, all around the little town area and the houses and everything. Really cute little ducks. Smaller than our Kīlauea, if you know our Kīlauea duck. These guys are even smaller. We also have bristle-thighed curlews. We have white terns. I don't know if anyone's been to Honolulu and seen the white terns there. There's a big colony there. We don't have them on this island, as far as I know. Not seen any yet? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. We do have the brown booby, and we have black noddies. They're gorgeous. And we have monk seals. We have quite a lot of monk seals. There's a good monk seal program there, monitoring them and tagging them. And we keep our distance just like we do here. We try to be really cautious moving around them. It's tricky when we're counting, especially around the shoreline. They're easy to miss in the cover, in the undergrowth, in the alpaca, but we try not to disturb them. On the right-hand side, you'll see a very large indentation. That was from a resting monk seal that had left, and my hat is for size. That was a heck of a, yeah, that was a big monk seal. We have an area called Turtle Beach. The green sea turtles, they do tend to pull up anywhere around the island, but on this beach particularly, they pull up every day to sun themselves. And this beach is off limits to anyone unless we're actually working the sector. Yeah. Yes. I've just kind of avoided the pictures, really. It's one of those topics that we could probably spend an entire presentation on. But yes, there's still a lot of plastic that washes up there. And one of the things we do during our spare time is to go out and do beach cleanups. But yes, you'll see it all over the island, sadly. And I think, I don't know, somewhere in the slideshow, there's a picture of a monk seal lying against an oil can. Yeah, you can't avoid it. It's everywhere on the island. We are depending. So we have staff on the island who are permitted to handle the monk seals, to handle the birds. We did have one of the counts I did a while back. We actually had a seabird recovery person, and she was on our team, and she actually helped us recover a couple of albatross, but we got permission from Fish and Wildlife. So typically we will call them and tell them if we see sort of an entanglement. The bone-in petrel was a different case where, again, we had a seabird specialist with us and we were able to disentangle it, but usually we would contact staff. Mentioned Battle of Midway, loads of memorials and monuments all over the island. This is probably the largest, with gun placements and plaques. And this one I enjoyed when I saw it. It says, "We'll hold Midway till hell freezes over." Sounds like something a Brit would say, but maybe the Americans say it as well, I don't know. This is a beautiful big black granite memorial that is actually on the old parade ground of the naval base. And that is there, that's used every year for the ceremonial memorial of the Battle of Midway on its anniversary. We do find military artifacts around the place, so old shells. This was out on Eastern. We don't take them, we leave them there. But you can see the size of some of those shells. The weather on Midway can be a real challenge. So even during the time we're counting, you never quite know whether a storm's going to hit. This one, I hope, recovered or remained okay, because you can see it's built its nest up. It was in sandy material, built it right up. As long as it can keep its egg dry and warm, then it will probably survive and the waters will subside. So it built itself a moat, which is great. Unfortunately, in many other places, we weren't so fortunate. So again, it's pretty much down at sea level. And this was an area that was flooded out by a bad storm we had. And of course, we lost all those eggs. That's the sort of thing that can affect the count, but over the numbers that we're talking about, it's not huge. We also get to see some birds, and this one we were able to rescue. It was okay. It wasn't injured, and it did get up and recover. But it was trapped. Either it came down trapped by a branch, or possibly roots. I think there were roots within a bone-in petrel burrow that it got caught in a storm.
Any predators? I mean,
well, there's another topic for another day. They did do a huge rat eradication many years ago, which was terrific and a huge success. Unfortunately, then the mouse population increased. And so like many of the other islands you've probably read about, the mice started attacking the albatross. So there were problems with that. They've kind of got it under control now in some respects. The last time I was there, we didn't have any attacks. But there was a year, some years ago, where they had some really bad attacks and they attempted a mouse eradication. But those little critters, you only need 1 or 2 to survive and they're off and running again. Apart from the storms, the island is an incredible, peaceful place to be. We see the most incredible sunrises and sunsets. Some of you who've been out there will recognize Rusty Bucket, one of my favorite places for sunsets. And the color of the sky can be amazing.
Louise?
Yeah.
There's a question on Zoom of how are they controlling for mice?
Gosh, Eldridge could probably answer this better than I can. There was an eradication program a couple of years ago that had been planned so well and almost succeeded, but didn't. And that was after a lot of planning, and they were able to drop what do you call it? Not pesticide, whatever, rodenticide. But it had to obviously take an awful lot of planning because they had the Laysan finch, the Laysan ducks, they had canaries, they had all sorts of other birds, and they had to corral those birds, especially the Laysan ducks, before they could drop the rodenticide. So it was a long, that's a very simple way of saying it was a long program to do it. And they thought they'd been successful, but they weren't. Meantime, I believe there are certain products that they can use that are less toxic. And so they are able, in certain areas where they know the mice are a problem, they're able to control to a certain extent. And if any of you know about the bird Wisdom, who doesn't really feature in this because so much else does, Wisdom is highly protected. Wisdom is the poster child of albatross, and there is, I think, a ring of fire around Wisdom when Wisdom. I hope I didn't speak out of turn. You can add anything. Okay, we're good. Eldridge says we're good, and he would know. He was there. So that was really all the pictures and the fun stuff and the videos about albatross. I want to spend a few minutes now thinking about the data that we collect and where it goes and what's done with it. And what we're doing here at Kīlauea Point as well, because my time on Midway is only during the count. There are other volunteers out there who are doing surveys while we're there and for the rest of the season. And what we're doing at Kīlauea Point and the Refuge mirrors that exactly. So first of all, just the project itself, which has been going for 20 years, over 20 years, collaboration between Fish and Wildlife, the Geological Survey, and also Colorado State University. They put together the protocol that we still use today. This manual is our Bible, and we follow it as regarding the count, the dates, etc., and also the surveys that follow. The original sites, Midway, Turn Island, Laysan Island, and Kīlauea Point here. So we've been taking part in this survey for many years. They're looking at adult survival, mortality, etc., how many numbers into the population, and then reproductive success. How many chicks are, how many eggs are laid, how many chicks are hatched, and how many of those chicks actually fledge at the end of the season. So they're looking, as I said, they need to know the numbers currently in the population, which our count goes towards, helps them with that. Numbers entering the population, which is the reproductive success survey they do, and numbers leaving the population, which is identifying adult mortality and survival. This is, you don't need to read the numbers on this, but this is the graph that we add on to every year. This is the cumulative graph of our count. And it actually goes back beyond that. We've got it written down on paper back to 1992, and I think online as well. But this detailed chart goes from 2004, so over 20 years. And you'll see, if you can see the green line, you'll see it goes up and down, fluctuates, fluctuates. It's still higher than it was 20 years ago, but there have been years when it's dipped considerably. Last year, as I said, was a very high year for Laysan albatross. That's Laysan, this is Blackfoot. They also dip, funnily enough, sometimes in opposite years. So last year, the year before last was a high year, last year was a fairly low year for Blackfoot. Yeah, 2015, that was the one that was higher than even this last year. So 666,044 Laysan, and I think the same for 15, even for the Blackfoot was just the highest as well.
Any guesses on the difference? Oh, that's like 100,000.
Yeah, some of them are that much different. I don't know, there could have been some kind of event that year that I just don't have the data for, or it could just be a very low year. The other thing it's susceptible to is environmental issues like feeding, and we find the same here. We wonder whether maybe the feeding grounds aren't as good one year than another, and that kind of thing. So a lot of things can alter it.
Another depressing question, I'm sorry. Has there ever been any sort of an avian flu or anything that has had a major effect?
I don't think we've had any avian flu in the past. But obviously, these days, this is a very, very high concern. I don't know if you know, but it has reached Maui now. They've had some occurrence on Maui. So here, we're very, very concerned about it. And obviously on Midway, they are as well. So they try and take precautions as best they can. But, you know, they haven't had any avian flu so far. Yeah.
And online, a question of what the green line represents.
The green line just represents a trend. Basically that you can do trend lines on the graphs, which just kind of show, because you've got so much variation over the years, from that line, you can tend to see whether the population is on the rise or fall. But the interesting thing for us is that it shows these dips and troughs, and you'll see how in many places it's year on year. One year will be a high year, next year will be a low year, then a high year again. So that green line just kind of gives you some of that indication of how it evens out. So that's the overall count. Of course, the limitations to that are that we are there just at one point in time, between mid-December and mid-January. You saw what can happen when a storm comes through and wipes out a whole load of nests. If we haven't counted that sector before it wipes out those nests aren't active, so they don't get included in our count. There are weather fluctuations, habitat fluctuations, huge swathes of ironwoods have come down over time, buildings have come down. So the populations in different sectors have also altered from one time to another. And we do not count the same sector on the same day every year. So the whole count gets done between mid-December and mid-January, but we may be counting different sectors on different days. So the fluctuations could be, especially for the sectors, could be a bit greater. So this is now going on to the kinds of surveys they're doing outside of the count, but adding into the data that's collected. For the reproductive success, they're taking allocated plots. They'd be the same plots every year like we have for sectors, but much smaller. They can't possibly survey 600,000 nests every week, but they can survey a selected number of them. And those plots are chosen for different kinds of environment, different kinds of habitat, so that they can try to get some sort of estimate across the island. And for that, they'll be doing weekly nest checks from when the nests start in November through July until the last chick fledges. They're banding the nesting adults and chicks, and then checking on those nests to determine the hatching rates and fledging success. For the adult survival, it's slightly different. What they want to do there is to try to catch every band of the adults that are nesting each year. And through that, what they do is sweeps. Again, when I say they, that's exactly what we're doing in Kīlauea Point as well. So 3 to 4 sweeps during the year between December and January, just during that period when the eggs are being incubated. The idea being that if you check every 2 or 3 weeks, you're likely to get both parents because one will have come back and swapped with the other one. So you can build up a picture of both parents for each nest. Identify all the nesting birds, and they also ban new nesters on Midway. I am not a statistician. I can't answer any questions about these, and it's probably too small for you to see anyway. This is just saying, yeah, it looks good. It's a lot of hard work went into these charts. It's about 20 years of data. But I thought it was interesting just to call out this one because you asked about the tsunamis. I put it in especially for you, John. In this chart here, this is Blackfoot survival, and this is the Laysan survival. And the blue line are for the Blackfoot that were on Eastern Island, and the yellow line is for the Blackfoot that was on Sand Island. And you can see this devastating dip in 2011, which was because of the tsunami. So that was part of the numbers. And the reason the Blackfoot, if you look at Laysan, are even more susceptible is because they're a smaller population. And the Blackfoot tend to like to nest much closer to the shoreline than the Laysan. So many more of the Laysan would have survived on, say, sand, whereas even on Sand Island, the beefowl were devastated, but on Eastern, even worse because of the overwash of the tsunami. I just thought that kind of thing was quite interesting. When you're looking at statistics, you kind of need to know what was going on during that time as well. Future of the nest count. I thought I'd put this in because a lot of people have asked me what's happening to the nest count over the years. And there's a lot of talk going on at the moment because it started in 1992. That's an awful lot of data we have. And so having run for 30 plus years, and now when you look at funding and resources for any project that's going on, the needs are looked at for this count and said, do we still need to put that amount of funding into it? That would have been even last year we started talking about it. This year, the funding is just, the bottom's gone. And so we've had to look to outside funding, grants, etc. We've also been very grateful to friends of Midway Atoll who've stepped up and given us extra funding as well. So it will take place this year now that we're no longer shut down. So they are going out to do the count this year. But there are other considerations as well. The bone-in petrels, for example, are a big consideration because of the effect, the impact on them when we're tromping through all of these sectors, and also the impact for us. It's really not fun on the volunteers either. It's not only exhausting to keep crashing burrows, but emotionally it's hard when you worry about what's happening to those birds. So do we really need to still do it in the same way and cover the entirety of the atoll in the same way? So those questions are being asked now, especially now that we have the benefit of new technology. Last year, we started a drone research program, taking images of the sectors as we count them to try and compare. Sounds fine, except when you think of taking an image from the air, how the heck are you meant to tell the difference between a bird that's sitting on an egg and a bird that's sitting on the ground? So that's where AI comes in, and they haven't got there yet, but they're working on methods of using AI to interpret those images to try and get some sort of estimate that we can use going forward, so that maybe we don't have to survey every single sector as we do for the count at the moment. Happy to talk about that more with people later if you have any thoughts, but the jury's out as to what's going to happen. But we certainly hope that, well, the count's going to happen this year. I hope it'll happen next year, and who knows how we will be conducting it after that. I mentioned that we do the same surveys here on Kīlauea Point. So same thing, we map all our nests. For us, we have the entire population, because we're taking every single nest. We've got probably within about 200 or so, very roughly, nests each year at a maximum across our colony. So it's not difficult for us to keep track of every single one. And so our surveys, weekly surveys, are for every single nest that we have. We will take the nest data, we look at taking the data through incubation right through to chick development and fledging. We also make a note of every walker. That's the non-nesters, or maybe the youngsters that aren't breeding yet, or the ones that have come back and chosen not to breed this year. We'll mark all of those because that plays into survival as well. Because we're resighting those birds, we know that they've come back this year. We also take part in the PMRF egg swap program. Most of you have probably heard about that, Pacific Missile Range Facility down on the west side. They have a colony of albatross that they're gradually trying to decline by taking the fertile eggs from that colony and bringing them to North Shore properties, not just us, but to other properties as well, and giving them to birds that have an infertile egg. That way the egg survives, the chick survives, and when the chick fledges, it comes back to where it was hatched, not back to PMRF. And there's a certain idea about the success of that is not only that the chicks are not going back there, but we believe that more and more some adults are relocating as well. So we see birds that we know were banded at PMRF now starting to nest up on our lands as well. At the end of the season, all of that data gets transcribed into huge data sheets and sent to the Fish and Wildlife and also to the GS, the Geological Survey Bird Banding Lab. And if you haven't heard about that, that is where every resite of every bird is kept in a huge big database going back many years. These are the sheets that we use. It's probably a bit pale at the back of the room, but basically we have a big sheet of paper, A4 paper. When we go out in the field, we'll start mapping next week. We'll map each of our nests. They'll all get a number. We will gradually, as the season goes on, identify each of the birds on that nest. We will note when we first saw the egg, not necessarily when it was laid, but the first time we did a survey that saw the egg, first time we saw a chick, and then codes for each of the weeks. If a bird is incubating an egg, if it's sitting on a chick, if different stages of the chick. So we have all of that monitored. But now, as of 2-3 years ago, we actually have an app on our phones, thanks to Fish and Wildlife. So now we can plug all of those nests into the map, which means that when we're surveying, if we miss one, we can see, because we can toggle between different colors. We know if we've missed a nest, which is a really good thing. And then we can drill into a sheet on our phones that gives us the information where we can enter in the parents, etc. So all of that is much easier now to take from there and dump into a spreadsheet rather than writing out everything that we have on our list. By the end of the year, we've got a complete picture of all of our nests. We know the fate of each egg. We know the fate of each chick. We have all the totals along the bottom, and that's the data that we send in, or we keep only also for our own records.
You do this just on Kīlauea?
Yep, all of this is. Well, they have a similar thing. They don't use this same sheet that we have, but they're taking the same information. They use little notebooks. They're effectively doing exactly the same thing, but they will have possibly a different sheet. That this is our breeding database. I'm not sure theirs looks exactly like ours, but our information feeds into data that then goes to the other organizations.
But that would be for just a segment of the population at Midway. There's no tracking.
Correct.
That
No, not tracking for the whole lot. Exactly that. Remember that the surveys, the weekly surveys and the survival sweeps are only done on a portion of the population. For us, we're doing on every nest on the colony. This is just on Albatross Hill, code AH. We also have, of course, all of Kīlauea Point, Crater Hill area as well. So this is just a sample just to show you. I mentioned that we mark every walker. Again, we have a data sheet we take with us. We write down every walker we see. Again, I'm sorry that this screen probably isn't very clear for you at the back, but those highlighted ones I simply highlighted because these are a couple of our foreign birds. These guys came back to us from Guadalupe. Orange, O for the band, W for the code color, so orange band with white lettering, and this number was 2K1. We had another one back, 6M3. Both of those are just walkers this year. Maybe they'll make a nest, maybe they won't. Again, all of that gets pulled into a spreadsheet. And so by the end of the season, we can see exactly how many of those birds have visited. And if we order by the bird number, we can see 2K1 came back 6 times during last year, from January to April. And then we can compare with previous years and see if he keeps coming back. You don't have to do any of that, but if you're interested, you can make a note of any bird band that you see. So if you're wandering around Princeville and you see a band, especially if it's a different color from the black and white, but even the black and white ones, then main thing to do is to make sure you make a note of the date and time you saw it and where you saw it with as much detail as you can give. And then the band color and ID, it's important to be accurate, because inaccurate information in the database can cause all sorts of problems. So make sure you really have read the band carefully, your contact info, and then just go to reportband.gov. And reportband.gov takes you to the USGS site, where it will step you through very easy tabs to put in the information. And if you can't be bothered to do it and you have my phone number, tell me you've seen it and all that information, and I'll put it in for you. So another thing you can do if you're fascinated by these birds, this year, for the first time, we're very excited that Friends of Midway Atoll have funded a webcam out on Midway. You can pull this up on your TV or your iPad or your phone any time of day and find birds wandering across your screen and listen to exactly what you heard on those videos. If you go to YouTube, Midway Atoll Wildlife Live Cam or Midway Atoll Albatross, we'll find it. And this is what you'll see. You'll see a lot of bone-in burrows, for one thing, and all the birds starting to gather. These were grabbed in the last couple of days. So no nests that I can see yet, but they're all settling down and getting busy, active. And if you look at it at night, also you can pull the bar back. You can look hours back. It's not just what's live. You can scroll back and see what happened last night, and you'll see the bone-in petrels or nanulu moving around here. You can see them digging their burrows. And you can also hear them, which you didn't really hear on the video I showed you because the albatross was so noisy. And Thomas, I was going to go take you to the live cam. Wouldn't that be fun? But Thomas reminded me that might not be possible. So instead, I did the next best thing. It's not a great visual, but this, I hope, is a video that I grabbed early this morning. Is it going to?
I might need to do it. I'm so big.
Is it because the band's off the screen?
I'm not sure.
Oh, that would be a shame if we failed at the last step. Thank you. It's a lot more fun when you see it moving. Yeah. Yeah, it's set, you know where the group of houses are, the small houses just off the main drag up to the barracks. It's set on one of those houses looking up this hill.
Oh,
so I think it's looking to, is it sector 40, 20 something and 40 up there? Do you remember those? You did it? Oh, brilliant. Okay. Watch this corner on the screen, the far left corner. That poor female just got attacked on its way in. Now watch. Uh-oh, there's 4 others. Make a beeline for her. So I found this bit of bird porn, especially for you all. You're welcome. But that's what's going on all over at the moment. So they're nesting, they're copulating. Probably this field will get a lot quieter in the next few days because a lot of the females will go off with their baby moon. They will start forming the egg and then they'll come back and nest.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now I have to see.
Can you send it back to me? Or you can do it.
Sorry.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Oops.
Oh, do you want to see it again?
That's all or nothing with me. Yes.
We could show it again and again. No worries. That was, oh, there you are. Oh, yes, worries, because this is one of the important screens. This is really the end of it. But I did want to shout out to a few names. There are so many, and many people have helped with this over the years, especially numerous kupu and volunteers. But actually name Kim Uehara, who used to be our biologist at the Refuge. And she was the biologist when I first came here, first started volunteering at the Refuge. She was my mentor for the Albatross. I helped her with them. I learned so much about them. And now I and Yuka Green are the 2 who have taken over the monitoring of the birds. And that's all thanks to Kim, but also the help of everybody else at Kīlauea, all of the staff, and Bryn, who's now our new biologist, who with everything they've been going through this year, which, as Thomas has remarked about, so I won't again, but has been extraordinary. And it goes with heartfelt thanks for everything you do to support us trying to do this monitoring for fish and wildlife. And externally, we work closely with Pacific Rim Conservation. They're contracted to do other work for the Refuge, but Dylan Blanchard in particular is just an amazing guy who will always tell us what's going on with the albatross when he's out somewhere on Kīlauea Point, if he finds an injured one, or if he notices something, or in this case, just a couple of weeks ago, he was the one who spotted the first bird to land back on Kilauea's soil that we knew about. So, and I think that's been the same in the past as well. He's been the first one to spot a bird. And then PMRF, we love being associated with the egg swap program now, being able to do that. That's it. Any questions on the Zoom?
Find out.
So while you're thinking about if you have any more questions to ask, I will just start a slideshow so you don't have to look at me the whole time. Just loads of pictures that I don't have time to talk about, but I just thought it'd be fun for you to watch. Yeah, you had a question.
You can tell how many fledge here because you got their eye on them and you know the empty nest. But what's the percentage of fledglings over in Midway compared to,
the interesting, what they're doing for a start is that they're only looking at those plots that I mentioned. So they're taking the percentage of fledges or hatches and fledges over the particular plots that they are monitoring, not over the 600,000. So they use that as a percentage, and their percentages actually are not far off ours. We find that the fluctuations that we have here are not dissimilar from Midway. They have good and bad years. If they have a really bad storm come through, that can really affect their hatch numbers from the number of eggs they had, and the fledgling, of course. So something like the tsunami, of course, wiped that out. So, but I would say, I don't know, Kim, whether you have any feeling for that as well, but I think the percentages are sort of in the realm. I wouldn't like to speak out of turn and try and tell you what they are now, but some years are better than others.
and they all go north?
Yeah, once they fledge, the chicks will go north to feed, and they will be gone for at least 3 years, sometimes longer. It'll take 3 to 5 years to come back. Probably that one sitting on a fishing buoy was probably a first year back, possibly. So they don't nest the first year they come back. It will take them maybe 2, 3 more years to find a mate that they're happy with. And so they might start nesting anywhere from about 7 to 9 years old, something like that.
When do the petrels take off?
Uh-huh.
Could you repeat that question?
When do the bone-in petrels take off? If you mean when are they on the island, there's only a couple of months during the year, I think during the late summer when they're not there, they go out to sea. but the bone-in petrels are there most of the year. So of course they're there when we're counting, which is why we have to be so careful. They're then nesting, they're getting the nest ready while we're there, and they will lay their eggs anytime from about mid-January onwards, which is another reason for us to complete the count before the middle of January.
On Zoom, we have a couple questions. Is there just one camera on Sand Island? I heard something about another on Eastern.
Yeah, I saw something in a chat earlier today. Only the one at the moment that I know of. I'm not sure if they are planning to send another one out to Eastern at any point. I kind of be surprised if they did, because there's no one to look after if anything goes wrong with it. Not that they're really monitoring this one either. But it's there, it's on a house, and residents get to it if they're told there's a problem with it. On Eastern, I'm not quite sure what the benefit would be.
And one other question, do you see evidence of the albatross taking care of each other when on Midway?
Taking care of each other, oh yes. There may be one or two preening photos amongst the slideshow, but they absolutely act like they do here when they are pairs together. Once they've done the deed and settled down and managed to avoid all the males that are trying to get after them, and they're settled on their nest. But when their partner comes back, you'll often see them caring for each other in exactly the same way that happens here. The nest swap is always a wonderful time when they come back to swap the male with the female or whatever to take over the incubation. They will often sit there for some time just preening each other, and the one on the nest doesn't want to get off to let the other one on. You're really going to look after my baby? Are you sure? So all of the same mannerisms that we see here, you'll see there too.
Is it hard to keep them off of the runway?
Yes. No, it's true. I mean,
That was, is it hard to keep them off the runway?
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, yes, it is. It's I didn't really mention the active runway, which is on Sand Island. So not the disused ones on Eastern, but that active runway on Sand Island is very important to keep clear. And yes, there are constantly albatross there, and they have to be just hazed when they arrive so they don't make nests there. So they'll drive up with a golf cart and they'll shoo them off and try to get them off to the sides. Why they choose rock hard tarmac as opposed to nice soft grass, I don't know, except that patches of grass are getting hard to come by now because there's so many of them. But they'll nest right up to the edge of the tarmac of the runway.
Which difference in when they hatch and fledge on Midway is?
So the dates for hatching and fledging on Midway as opposed to here, interesting enough, it's a little bit earlier. And also the Blackfoot are a little bit earlier than the Laysan. They arrive a little bit earlier. They will lay their eggs probably a week or two earlier than the Laysan. They're hatched a week or two earlier. As for them and here, the Laysan as a comparison, probably about a week or more earlier than here. So when we're there till the end of January, we're seeing quite a lot of chicks hatch, whereas here it's usually just around the end of January, beginning of February that they start. So a little bit of difference. I don't know what that is. Is it because they're nearer to the north, so it doesn't take them so long to fly there? I don't know.
Is the short tail from hatch to fledge longer than for Laysan and Blackfoot?
No, I don't think it's much longer. The short tail will come back earlier and it hatches earlier. I think the time is probably about the same, but it hatches around about the end of December, beginning of January. So usually, 31st of December, 1st of January, the year I was there last year, which is quite a lot earlier. It's a month earlier than the others. Hey, Sharon. Asking about the barracks that are on there. I think if we're talking true barracks, then laughing at pictures. The true barrack like Charlie, then I don't know whether there were any more. I know of Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And now Alpha, Bravo, and Delta are all down. Alpha was already down before I went there the first time. Bravo has come down in the last few years. Delta came down a few years before that. Charlie, they will try to maintain as long as possible because it's almost like a hotel for us, for temporary people.
There was the lead paint.
Yes, I don't know. Yeah, they had to mitigate for that around Bravo, yeah, and Delta as well, I suppose. So how they dealt with that, I don't know. It's a bit like digging around the lighthouse. But yes, it was awareness. It is a tropic bird chick. Yeah, and it was nesting in a hollowed out tree just outside our house. So we watched it grow up. I'm going to watch the pictures with you because I don't know what you're laughing at. There's the two beautifully coordinated sky moves. This is under one of the old piers. We can go there and snorkel. Beautiful water. On a monk seal. I will say I've got quite a good zoom lens on my camera. So when you see some, and also I've cropped a lot of these. So those pictures of the monk seals, I'm not as close as it looks. So some of them are a bit, not the resolution's not so good. That's on Eastern. It was a red, I think it was a buoy. I think it was a fishing buoy. Or else a kid's toy, which we get a lot of as well. Yeah, Jason. How long do Laysan albatross live? Anybody tell me how old we think Wisdom is at least? Yeah, he's about at least 75. Wisdom was banded as an adult, so we honestly don't know. That's the oldest one we know of. I believe it's the oldest living banded bird, not just albatross. So we know it's at least that old, but it could be 80, 90. That's all I can say because it was banded as an adult. Yeah, it's wonderful. That's the oil can I was talking about next to the. Huh? Actually, yeah, that's a good question. The number of eggs that an albatross can lay in a lifetime. Well, if you think that it can start laying from about the age of 7, it doesn't necessarily lay one every year, but Wisdom was pretty prolific. And I think up until probably about 10 years ago, someone said it laid about 35 eggs, I think. So she was one of these birds that would lay year after year. She's taking a bit of a sabbatical at the moment. She's slowing down.
Well, I was going to ask, the last year that Wisdom laid an egg was what, 2023, 2024?
I think so, yeah. And I think the last time she laid, I'm not sure it was successful either. Did it fledge though? I can't remember. In fact, I'm not sure it even hatched. So yeah, yeah. So still laying, but they're not always successful. How many? Oh, good question. How many mates has Wisdom had? Yeah, these males, they just can't take the longevity. I think they're probably up to about certainly 3, maybe 4 now. They didn't keep track of them in quite the same way as they did Wisdom. But there's an example of the plastic for you. I had to put 1 or 2 in there. The first time I went out there, one of the other crew was a playwright, and she wrote a play saying, "My toothbrush killed an albatross." I love that one. Yeah.
So, are they usually
Are Laysan albatross monogamous? Yes, usually. Usually. So typically they are, and some, if they lose a mate, they may or may not choose to mate again. Sometimes it takes them 2 or 3 years to find another mate. But I say usually because you can never say never or always. And even within the Princeville area, we have records of divorces, thruplets, do they call them? Thruples, that's it. We've had thruples, we've had divorces, we've had conniving males that have jumped about 3 or 4 females when they get the chance. And we are still talking about albatross. What else? We've got bachelors. We've had, actually there was one, Kathy, what was it? Was it something like K007? We had one that was a renowned bachelor, and I swear it had the number 007. Was that you or not? 007. There you go, marriages, divorces, and remarriages. Yeah. So, but yes, typically most of them are. In the same way that most are faithful to their hatch area, they'll come back to where they were hatched, but not everyone. Like the fact that we have a mix, we get some going to Midway from here, we get some coming from Guadalupe to here. Who knows how many Midway birds we have here, because of course the majority of those are not banded, so we would never know. So yeah. This was during a storm. You can see how they're all facing the same direction and they're all their heads up, their necks are right down, heads are up catching raindrops. I love those white terns.
Are either of the male or the females more place bound? They would tend to go back to the same place more than
That's a really good question. I don't know. Hob might be able to help me with that one on her pairs. I wouldn't say I've really noticed so much. I've had a slightly different circumstance where I used to have 2 females nesting on my grounds, and one of them, the mate never came back 1 year, obviously lost at sea. And about 2 years later, my one girl hitched up with another girl. And then they ended up nesting at a different house, and they've nested at that same house 3 years running now. So obviously one was a stronger character than the other and made its decision, but whether it's based on male or female, I don't know.
Any other questions?
Feel free if you don't need to stay for the end of the slideshow.
Louise.
I can't remember how many more there are. Oh, they're coming in soon. It's just a few more. I know this because that was one dusk. I took that one. That's it. That was, yeah. Yes, actually quite a few.
Question of how many folks from the room have been into Midway?
Yeah. Hob. Night, night.
5 to 6 hands raised.
Sharon, you mentioned, yeah. Oh, yes, Mary Lucia. Yeah. Yeah, so if you've got anything to add, feel free.
All right, Louise, thank you so much.
How are you?
Good.
So Dan and I, we are caretaking the birds at, part of the team that caretakes the birds at Nainakai.
Oh, yeah.
So we keep a very detailed amount of data.
Yep.
And it's a pretty large colony, you know, it's
Yeah,
last
it's
year
grown.
was 65 nests.
Wow, okay.
And 52 which were marked by USGA, and we fledged 50 of them.
That's cool.
So
And all that data you are sending in, I believe.
we are.
because you've got
all
different codes.
mapped on- It's digital. I have spreadsheets, but we have teams of people that go each day. So we take turns.
Well, that's good. You've got
So
you're
but I
checking every day. I
standardize-
need to check every week.
standardize-
Yeah.
Standardize how they work. But that app that you talked about